innovate, and create lasting impact. And today I have my special guest, faith, family, and business entrepreneurs, millionaire at 26, a multiple business owner, none other than Mr. Chris McManus.
Yeah, Daniel. Happy to be here, man. Excited to get going.
Welcome, Mr. Chris on Entrepreneurship 101. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we get a quick little 30-second, 50,000 foot view. Grew up on a farm in North Carolina. Started landscaping to help pay bills as I was an aspiring professional motocross racer and needed some more money. That did not last very long, and the business started taking off. So we basically took all my energy that I'd always put into sports and athletics and stuff like that, started pouring it into the business pretty much right out of high school. And it's kind of grown from there. We've made a few acquisitions. The most latest one has been a pool company. So now we're a landscaping and pool company. That's been a lot of fun. And do a little bit of real estate on the side. It's just kind of something I enjoy. And I think it's going to help me on my, kind of upward trajectory of hopefully financial freedom.
Financial freedom, and the mindset must be money, money come to me. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And Mr. Chris, thank you. And today, let's talk about the landscape business growth. So tell us, many landscape businesses owners experience successful stagnation. They are busy and profitable, but trapped in the business. What is the fundamental mindset shift required to grow a company you lead rather than just a job you own?
Letting go of control and letting go of some perfectionism.
Mm,
Those are
nobody's perfect.
very, very hard things to do. So important. That really hindered me in my first couple of years. I'm quite the perfectionist. Nobody can do it as good as I can, so I might as well be the one out there doing it. And not necessarily anything wrong with that. A lot of relatively successful small companies. But let's face it, it can be hard on your body. It's hard on your mind, hard on your family. If you want to
True.
take a vacation, your income stops while you're on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what are you going to do for retirement? I think that's the thing that probably pushes buttons the most. So, as we've grown and scaled, I've, not perfect by any means, but definitely getting better with relinquishing some control and, starting to focus more on the larger levers and buttons that I need to be actuating and making sure I'm not in the field performing the work. That's not where my time can best be served. So that's the two biggest, I think, for me that I see constantly is letting go of control. And that goes hand in hand with, being a perfectionist is great. You want to make sure you're doing just a phenomenal quality service, but it doesn't need to be you personally doing that service.
Mm, definitely. So, Mr. Chris, tell us, revenue can grow while profits stall. What are the first three financial metrics a landscape owner should master before pursuing aggressive growth to ensure they building wealth, not just volume?
I think probably the three that we watch the hardest from a growth perspective. Number one is going to be your gross profit as a percentage. We strive to have that number at 50%, or kind of at a minimum 40%. I think anything below 40%, and you're going to be spinning your wheels. And then, of course, following your gross profit percentage is going to be kind of your cost of overhead percentages. You want to keep that really low. That's something we've done really good at is keeping, running really lean, keeping our staff lean, not being overly aggressive in that part. And that has some pros and cons as well. And then finally is that net profit number. And I'm going to throw a fourth one in there that I've, started paying more attention to over the last 12 months. And that's just cash flow. As companies grow, you really got to watch the cash flow, because now maybe you're not worried about the $1,000 a week payroll or the $5,000 a week payroll. Now you're worried about the $30,000, $40,000 a week payroll, and you may be turning a lot of work, and your gross profit margin and net profit margin may be pretty good. But if you're on, a 30-day pay schedule or a 60-day or even a 90-day pay schedule, well, you 100% could hit a dry spot, right there at 45 days and be like, wow, we're out of cash. We've been working our butts off, getting a lot done, but we have no cash. So I'm going to say, I'm going to put 4 in there. And I think those are the 4 that you've got to watch like a hawk, and you got to make sure you understand them.
Def- Definitely. So, Mr. Chris, is your ideal growth path about vertical integration, just like adding design or building irrigation or maintenance, geographic expansion or niche specialization? How do you diagnose the right path?
For us, it's primarily geographical. I
Mm,
think that's going to vary for a lot of people, just based on where we're located at. Our area is a little bit more rural, so we're going to kind of hit the top end of our market probably in the next 2 years of what this location can basically produce. Of course, we could niche down and specialize a little bit, but the primary is going to probably be geographical for us.
the growth or Yes, growth often conflicts with the original lifestyle business dream. How do you consciously design a growth plan that expands your company's capacity and value without sacrificing your health, family, and sanity?
It's difficult.
True,
um,
difficult.
yes, and I'm bad for that. I'm the guy that'll work 70, 80, 90 hours a week. Um, there's a part of my brain that loves that loves the grind, and I don't necessarily have anything against anybody that's doing that. But I've recently had a son within the last year, so that's definitely changed my perspective on that a little bit. And it's made me very conscientious of the fact that, yes, I need to focus and grow my business and improve my business, but I also want to be there for my son. I want to watch him grow up, and I want to be there with my wife and be able to spend time with her. So I think for me, it's really focusing on those, 50 or 60 hours or even 40 hours maybe that you're going to work that week,
Hmm.
really time blocking and prioritizing and making sure those, 50 hours a week that you're working are on the correct things that you need to be working on, and being able to delegate everything else.
Definitely. Skilled labor is the number one constraint beyond higher pay. What is the innovative strategies for attracting, developing, or retraining great field leaders and managers in competitive market?
That's something we're still improving on. I think the biggest thing, you got to pay them well. We pay far and above what anybody in our area pays. Um, our prices reflect that. I'm okay with that. I think that's probably number one. The guys got to be, they got to be able to pay their bills. Number two, treat them like humans. And I think that's something that my generation does a better job of maybe than previous generations have. Um, Treat them like humans. You got to respect them. With the Gen Zs and millennials, there's a lot of, I think, negative input out there about them not wanting to work, and I don't find that true, frankly. I think they're just a lot more outspoken than previous generations have been in the past, and they really do well with responsibility. So we pay well, we delegate, and we try to train really well, and that's something we're constantly evolving with and improving upon. But I think, having some trust in them, you got to have checks and balance, but they don't want to be micromanaged. You've got to let them do their job, and then make sure you have the checks and balances in place to where hopefully that job doesn't get too screwed up. But there's a lot of good talent out there, in these younger generations. You just got to find it, and you got to manage it a little bit different than some previous generations, I think.
Mr. Chris, Reliance on word of mouth hits the limit. What does this tag marketing plan look like? Moving from referrals to a targeted digital presence to outbound sales and recognizable brand.
For us, that's a big push we're doing in 2026. And that's going to look like a lot of social media, a lot of Facebook, a lot of Google reviews. Those are really big right now. So it's a really concentrated effort on that. We are revamping our website entirely to kind of mesh well with that and be able to track those things. I think that's a big thing. I think paper advertising still has its place, especially for brand recognition, but I think a lot of it is going to be it's social media based. Let's face it, everybody's on social media. Maybe
Yes.
a lot of people probably aren't listening to the radio anymore, or they're not listening or reading, the newspaper, but they're still driving up the road. They're still seeing billboards and signs, and everybody's on Instagram, everybody's on TikTok, everybody's on Facebook. I think even SEO is not quite as it's getting so expensive. It's hard, frankly, for a small business to afford somebody that can really optimize it. So it's kind of sourcing and finding the right people and the right levers to be able to kind of utilize all that social media along with Google and all the other SEO platforms to kind of synchronize. So they're kind of all working together. That's what our focus is. I'm really excited about that. That's something we've just started in the last few weeks, and we've already got to roll a lot of that out. And I'm really excited to see how well that's going to work for us.
Good luck for that, Mr. Chris. So, what are the specific cash flow management strategies for a landscape business funding new equipment, a larger payroll, or extended payment terms on commercial projects?
Um, you definitely want to work out your accounts with any vendors, any suppliers. You want to make sure you're on, 30-day, 60-day accounts. That just gives you a little breathing room. Of course, you got to pay them. Good business credit cards, same thing. We've done it here ourselves where we've put ourselves in a spot relying too much on credit. But those are really crucial, especially as you're scaling and cash flow can get tight. And then really just being conscientious of debt and watching your debt load and how much you're leveraged. And also, frankly, like I sit down weekly, if not more often, and I cash flow project out for the next week, the next month, the next 3 months constantly. So, and the goal of that is to where, okay, hey, I can do it right now. I can pull up and say, look at all our jobs, look at everything we've got lined up, what's coming in, what's going out. And I can basically be like, okay, hey, in 2.5 months from now, we're going to run low on cash. How can I fix that? We're going to probably move some jobs around. Maybe we'll put in a few more residential jobs and, kind of just bump up the cash flow for that period and then hopefully avoid that pitfall.
Strategic growth, Mr. Chris, requires pruning. So, what are the signs that a client service type or geographic area is actually hindering your growth? And how do you gracefully exit to focus on a better opportunities?
Tracking the right KPIs, tracking the right net promoter scores are going to give you two pretty glaring flags there if something's not working. And then just good old fashioned, budgeting and job forecasting. And, when we close out jobs, we're looking through every single line item. We're tracking, okay, we had this many hours, we spent this much on material, we had this much drive time in the work trucks on the way to the job. And wow, we've been doing this maintenance service for this customer for 4 months, and we've actually lost $900 or $4,000 or whatever, and we've had plenty of those. So we approach that in several ways, depends on the circumstance. It may just be a price increase, and the price increase may typically can result in termination of services, which is fine. It's graceful. It's business. And sometimes it's just a matter of having those conversations. Say, hey, Miss Smith, we appreciate doing your property. We thank you so much for all the work, but this doesn't really fit our business model anymore. And we are so sorry. We're not able to provide any more service, but here's a list of 3 other service providers that we trust and that should be able to help you out. So we're not creating a problem for them by doing that. We're making sure we have a solution for a problem before we do it.
So, Mr. Chris, at this stage, should business invest in integrated business management software, or what the cost of doing too early versus too late?
I think, frankly, for our business, for the landscaping industry as a whole, there is some really, really great low cost, even free integrated management software. Something that I did not do for the first 36 months I was in business was have any of that software. I highly, highly, highly recommend, even if it is a one person business, to use that software, get very familiar and comfortable with that software. Because what that ran into us is by the time we finally did select and start integrating a software company, just unimaginable amounts of time spent getting it built out and getting it integrated. And then we picked the wrong one. So after 2 years with that one, we ended up making a change last year. And the bigger you get, the harder it is to make that change and the more time and effort required, and the more things that can fall through the cracks. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that is something that you start as soon as possible. It's going to save you a lot of time and headache in the future.
Mm, yes. Do it now, people, not later. So, what are the non competitor partners like architects, realtors, or general contractors or garden centers that can become be predictable pipeline for higher margin work? How do you structure those relationships, Mr. Chris?
For us, it's just taking care of them. We don't treat them a lot different than just an employee. You know, they're family. They're an employee of our business. They're crucial to our business. So when we have general contractors call that we perform a lot of work for, we take care of them. You know, we don't make them wait. We don't tell them, hey, you know, we appreciate the $2 million worth of work that you fed us, but we're not going to be able to get to your job for 3 months. To me, that's just not smart business. So when they call, you know, it's they kind of get, there's, just to be frank, there's some favoritism there because they're going to take care of me, and I know they're going to give us a lot of work in the future versus this client up the street that's paying us to do a $10,000 job, who's a great client, and he's no less important than the general contractor, but that's going to be a $10,000 service, and we're probably never going to hear from him again. Versus our general contractor is going to call me in a month with another $300,000 in projects. So we're gonna take care of them. And then from our garden centers and our nurseries, it's just be respectable, be predictable, pay your bills on time, and just be grateful. And just like I said, treat them like a human. Treat them like you'd want to be treated.
Be grateful, people, and count your blessing and stop complaining. Buying another book of business or a small competitor can be a leap. What are the key due diligence questions specific landscape businesses, and what is the most common post acquisition pitfall?
There's several. I think probably the biggest thing is study the clientele base, study the reputation, and study the employees. For us, when we made the first acquisition of my career, I studied all those things fairly well. Expect to lose some clients. That's typical. Expect to lose some employees. That's also typical. But you want to try to minimize that, and you want to do all this prior to making the acquisition, because the first one we bought out, it was a smaller company at the time, doing low seven figures in revenue. Came with, I think there was 9 or 10 employees. And the day we signed the papers, 2 or 3 of the employees quit. And the rest of them, they hung around for a while, but we ended up terminating several more of those as the months went on. Just they weren't a culture fit for us, and replacing them. But if all those employees would have walked out the day we signed the papers, that would have been hard. We really could have struggled there. So I think that's, make sure it's a culture fit best it can be. There's always going to be a couple bad apples, and make sure that there is a diverse client portfolio. Because if you're buying a business that only has, maybe 3 contracts or 3 property management companies, basically 3 people that control the entire book of business, or even 4 or 5 people. If somebody is in control of more than frankly, in my opinion, 10% of that book of business, you need to make sure the deal can work without that person. Because if I go buy a business that has, 3 people, so I've only got each person controls 33% of the revenue of that business. Well, if I go in there and just one of them says, hey, no, you broke the contract by selling the business, so we're going to terminate it and bid the contract back out. Well, now the business that I just bought that did $1 million in revenue is now, only doing 670,000 in revenue. So there's a big chunk right there that just poof went out the door. So studying and making sure their client portfolio is diversified and nobody's going to hold more than 10 or 15% of the sales revenue of that business.
Well, very well said, Mr. Chris. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, when you look back in 10 years, what will define a grown landscape businesses? Is it the revenue, profit, or marketing dominance, or number of employees thriving, or a legacy of beautiful, sustainable spaces you've created?
Man, I hope it's all the above. I do.
Mm.
Definitely want a legacy. Definitely want to be known for taking care of our people. If we take care of our people, the rest takes care of itself.
Definitely. Mr. Chris, will you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, please, guys, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. They're all GC Landscaping Inc. Across all 3 platforms. Check us out. Give us a follow. There's some really cool projects on there. Daniel, appreciate you having me on, man.
I have 2 more podcasts that you are in, Mr. Chris. Just book again another date for that 2 podcasts, and let's talk about your business itself. Yes, people, let's support Mr. Chris McManus, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering business like this to thrive. So, Mr. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Body people, see you soon.